Hey everybody! So I decided, even though I am so exhausted after this full moon eclipse, that I would get it together and do a breakdown of a pose, because I haven't done one in a while. It's funny because this last full moon yesterday was actually conjunct Mars. Mars is retrograde right now, and I've actually been like super exhausted ever since Mars went retrograde. And it finally dawned on me, you know, because Mars is my ruling planet. I'm in Aries, and so I'm heavily affected by Mars influences. And I thought, oh, he's going retrograde, no wonder I'm tired, because he's going backwards instead of forwards. But anyway, so I thought that I would do a little primary series today, as usual, and then break down the hips, especially in relation to like Eka Pada Sirsasana. So, like a lot of people, I think that like when I first started to do leg behind the head, I had kind of the philosophy that like there were those who could and those who couldn't, you know, and it was either easy for you or it wasn't. Of course, it was relatively easy for me, but what I found for the longest time I practiced was that I had a lot of stress in my lower back, especially like in the lumbar spine, and then up in the neck area. And I think this is like extremely common for us practitioners when we get to this point of like behind the head. And it actually wasn't until I began working with Maya Heiss. I had finished third series by this point, and we went back and we like kind of gutted everything and like revisited everything, and I have to give her credit, she's the one who showed me this technique, and I love it. I love it. So here's the thing about leg behind the head for a lot of us. First of all, if you internally rotate from the hip joint naturally, you're not going to like this, but it might be something to play with just because it's going to reveal that anatomical, not weakness, but something just like anatomically that you can bring attention to. One thing I've noticed about people with like long limbs is it tends to be easier to get your leg behind your head because the body, the anatomy, naturally compensates. So the shorter your limbs are, especially if you have like an Asian body type, the more difficult it's going to be to do these positions because the hips now have to compensate. Like if you have shorter limbs, like I have shorter limbs, I am only 5'3", I'm not a big person. For me to have a really deep leg behind the head, it's not going to come from my leg, it's going to come from my hip because my leg is only so long, right? Like I'm not really tall and lanky, I don't have this long vata body, so I have to find it really deep. Now, what I wanted to talk about in terms of the actual hip socket is how to find what you're looking for. Because so many of us, I'd say a good 60, 70, 80% of us are like, yeah, it's there, but like I'm feeling it here and here. And really you shouldn't be feeling it here and here. If you are feeling it deeply in the spine, that means that the hip's not doing its job. So you might be one of those body types where you can stick it behind your head, close that gap, and get it there. But I'm going to tell you right now, even though I can do this, I feel it a lot on my neck and I don't like it. So also, as we move into deeper variations, like if you do get to fourth series, for example, and you want to do Buddhasana or Kapilasana, you're going to need to get the foot down the back a little bit more, and it's going to be much more of a push-pull between you and your body to figure out how to do that. Now, I do have a whole course on hips, and I think I've actually done a video already kind of touching on this subject, but what I learned, and I have to give credit to Maya, is how to not just externally rotate coming in to the leg behind the head, but to like ultra, like, you know, take that hip joint into a external rotation. Sorry, I'm at a loss for words right now. So what I have my students do when they get to leg behind the head is instead of like reaching for the end goal, we just start to work into that hip joint. And one of the common exercises that I have them do is I have them bring the foot as parallel as they can to either the heart or the face, and then they're going to pull the foot in from the ankle so that you're protecting the joint, and then you're going to put the hand to the knee here, so not on the joint but kind of around the joint, so you're cupping the whole thing, and you're going to pull in and push out, and you're going to try to keep it level as you push this way. So what that does is it accesses the hip joint itself. And then when you go to take the leg behind the head eventually, you can bring it down the back behind the shoulder, and now it's behind my head, but the majority of the weight is behind the shoulder now and the back. So I'm not straining my neck like I used to, and it accesses the hip a lot better, like a lot better. So I know that this is a very common way to take the hip back, but as you can see, right, like now I'm really compensating with my spine as opposed to moving it out to the side and back in. Now there's going to be a gap there. I don't mind that gap. Eventually, if you want to close that gap, fine. But the point is we're working the hip joint. We want to get into this hip here. And this X marks the spot. I gotta tell you, this feels really good. So that's where you want to take it. It looks a little bit crazy on the knees. Ironically, it's safer on the knees because we're going so deep into the hip. And the best part about this particular stretch, or this way to cultivate that stretch, is you can do it in primary series with Eka Pada Sirsasana. You know, like you don't have to wait until you're doing Eka Pada Sirsasana to access this part of your hip. You can play with this right now. And I recommend you do, so when you get there, you're ready. So, yeah, ultimately you want to get the feet so they're kind of like down here as opposed to over here. And if you're feeling it in your low back too, like if you go there and you feel it in your sacrum or your lower lumbar spine, you're not accessing the hip as much as you should, okay? That's a direct indication that you need to go deeper into your hip joints before you take that leg any further. So anyway, have a wonderful weekend, guys. I hope that was helpful. Enjoy your hips. Don't get injured, and I will see you next time. Bye.